Hey guys, welcome to the Touchdown Table. I'm Ryan, that's Tyler, that's Jordan, and we've got a man-to-man Mayhem video, and it is a video like no other we have done before. We are all so hyped for it, and Jordan's going to tell us what's going on.
Yes, this is a video that's been brought up many times in the past, something that's been an idea that these two have just been talking about a lot and wanting to make a video of, so I made it, I obviously did that. I made it into a fun thing. So without further ado, I'll announce what we're doing. First of all, we call this a dink and dunk debate. And this will be a debate about who will win the AFC South. It's the case of Indianapolis v. Houston. Now we're doing this in court style. Now all the other man-to-man mayhem things that you may have watched, they have points. This will not have points, this will have a winner. And the winner is going to be the ultimate winner. No bonus round besides just the winner of the court. Now, you might be thinking, how is this going to be done? Well, I'm going to tell you. Now, before this, there's about 10 to 15 minutes for both the defendants sitting next to me to to prepare a opening statement. Now, they're going to each give their opening statement. Ryan will be giving his first because he won the coin flip that we had and chose to go first. So he'll be giving his opening statement. Tyler will be talking about Ryan's opening statement, and then Ryan will be talking about what Tyler had just said. So we're going to do that for both opening statements. I'm going to ask questions about both opening statements. I'm making notes on all this. I'm going to try to keep as much bias out. I'm going to take all the information that I hear. I'm going to write down and use only information that I hear in this discussion. And at the end, I'm going to give them 3 to 5 minutes just to talk about it themselves. So without further ado, let me just go to some of the judge, and then we'll be ready. What's going on? Oh, okay. Oh, okay. Unnecessary, but... All rise for your judge, Jordan. All rise. Come on, stand up.
We're going to do this?
Stand up. Here we go, stand up. All rise.
Just rise. Right. You can drop the cape now.
Don't sit. Hello.
Are you Supermans?
I am Judge Jordan.
Uncle?
We are here in the case of Indianapolis v. Houston. The court is now in order. You may sit down. We will now be hearing the opening statement of the Indianapolis. Take it away.
Wait.
Houston.
Yeah.
Houston.
I won the coin toss. All right, you can act like yourself. You don't have to get your...
Oh, I'm Judge.
Fluffy, whatever.
I'm Judge.
What's your name, Judge?
Judge Jordan.
Okay.
Can you at least talk normal?
No. This is my judge voice. I don't talk very much.
All right,
I just listen.
Give him your opening statement, buddy.
All right. We ready?
Yes, I'm ready. Let's hear it.
All right. So we begin today talking about the Texans and the Colts. And the Houston Texans are a team that is ready to take the next step to be a true contender, an AFC South champion, and more. It all starts with quarterback Deshaun Watson. He had a completion percentage of 68.3%, over 4,000 passing yards, and 26 touchdown passes compared to just 9 interceptions, and a quarterback rating of about 103. Those are all pretty dang good stats. He did this despite being pressured 135 times and being sacked 62 times. Both of those numbers are crazy high. But according to Pro Football Focus, the Texans' offensive line was actually one of the 3 most improved ones via the draft, and that is mainly because of Titus Howard and Max Sharping, the 2 guys that they took in the draft. You know, they weren't guys that people always expected them to take, but what they did, they drafted the position that they need, and they drafted good players at that position. You look at this Pro Football Focus article I'm reading, Titus Howard, 58th overall prospect on PFF's draft board, and Max Sharping, 50th overall. Not to mention, you got the best receiver in the game in DeAndre Hopkins. Lamar Miller is actually severely underrated. He showed bursts of potential last year. And then you got the defense. I don't really need to talk about the defense. It's been good for so long. J.J. Watt, Jadeveon Clowney, one of the best defensive lines in football. That defensive line contains several players far better than any defensive line player for the Colts. So, really, it's just this is a team that's poised to win now, and they're going to win now, and they're going to win this division.
Okay, thank you. I don't know if I changed my accent or not, but we're going with
Please
it.
talk normally.
No. Okay, Houston, give your 30-second speech on why what he just said was not good.
Which mean
I'm
Indianapolis.
in Minneapolis.
Yeah, I messed it up. Indianapolis. 30 seconds. Go.
And I'll give it to you, Ryan. Deshaun Watson is a solid quarterback. He has solid stats. Andrew Luck is a better quarterback in a lot of aspects of the ball, other than running the ball. He's proven that he has more experience with all this stuff. And you talked about how the Texans' offensive line was one of the most improved for the draft. It's pretty easy to be improved if you're such a bad offensive line. You get a couple players that improve it just a little, just make it better and make it okay. From being terrible to okay. It's still not a good offensive line. It's just improved. You said most improved. You didn't say very good. And yes, the defense is also solid. We'll give you that. DeAndre Hopkins and Will Fuller. We'll see. Will Fuller gets injured like every year, so it's just going to be DeAndre Hopkins. Really, Lamar Miller is really not that good. He has solid stats, but he doesn't have really playmaking ability. And stats don't mean everything.
Okay.
Okay.
Do you want me to respond to that or?
Yes, you have 30 seconds to respond. 30 seconds. You went too long in the opening statement, by the way. I'm
Alright,
deducting from that.
Well, you have to tell me beforehand.
No,
I didn't get a timeout.
I
You
told
said
you a
no.
minute. I
Alright.
did.
Well, I just really want to keep this agree because he talks about just how Andrew Luck is just so much better than Deshaun Watson. Well, last year, Andrew Luck actually had a worse completion percentage, more interceptions, and a worse QB rating than Deshaun Watson. So, Andrew Luck is human, and Deshaun Watson is actually better at him than those stats and was last year. I just want to get that out there.
Anything else? You have like 10 more seconds.
And not one receiver on that Colts roster is even close to being as good as DeAndre Hopkins is. I'm
Okay.
conclude.
Thank you. Now it's my time to ask questions to both parties after this debate on this.
You
Okay.
good there?
No. So I realized why I was saying Indianapolis and Houston because I'm typing in the wrong column right now, but it's okay. We're okay with that. Okay. My question here. You're both talking about the offensive line. Ryan, I want you to explain to me why the Texans line is better than the Colts line, or is it not at all?
All right, want to start now?
Yes.
Well, the Colts definitely have the advantage in the offensive line position. I will admit that, and I don't think anybody could argue against that when you compare these two teams' O-lines just based on stats and just pure knowledge of football. However, the thing is the Texans closed the gap. It is not as much of a gap between the Colts' offensive line skill and the Texans' offensive line skill. The Texans drafted, as I mentioned, Titus Howard and Max Sharping, two guys that were in the top 60 of overall prospects on Pro Football Focus's draft board. And, two guys that really have a lot to prove, but I think they'll step up. They'll get experience early. And there's veterans on that offensive line, such as Nick Martin and Zach Fulton, who have been there before. And also, you really just look like they've closed the gap. They're right there. Like, you just get these guys in there. And then it's not just the draft. You signed Matt Khalil in free agency, the former Panther. He's did some great things. He was injured last year, but he could get healthy. He's another veteran that can help these young guys. Is the Colts offensive lineman better than the Texans? Absolutely. But, the Texans closed the gap, and the Texans are not going to let Deshaun Watson get sacked 62 times. I guarantee it.
So you're saying that the offensive line of the Colts is better, that's an advantage, but the Texans line is good.
Yeah, I think the Texans have definitely closed the gap, and I think the Texans offensive line is a lot better than it was just a few months ago.
And then a question for Tyler. Ryan made the statement that there's not a receiver close on the Colts that is nearly as good as DeAndre Hopkins. Would you like to make an argument towards T.Y. Hilton?
I'm not going to make an argument towards T.Y. Hilton, but I want to talk about the receiver corps as a whole. You talk about DeAndre Hopkins, and yes, you have Will Fuller, who, as I mentioned, gets injured pretty often. You look at the Colts wide receiver corps. Although Hopkins is better than T.Y. Hilton, I will admit they have T.Y. Hilton, and they got Paris Campbell in the draft. Have Chester Rogers as well. Zach Pascal. A couple solid receivers there, not household names, but receivers that can get the job done for you. So as in all, even though DeAndre Hopkins as a player himself is better than T.Y. Hilton. The receiver core, I believe, is better than the Texans receiver core.
Thank you for your points. I have no further questions on my mind right now based off of that. So I'm ready to hear the Indianapolis opening statement.
All right, I have a minute to do this, right?
You have a minute. You can go a little bit over, not too far over.
All right. The Indianapolis Colts have been absolutely decimated by terrible injury luck for many years. The bad luck starts with the quarterback, Andrew Luck. This is the first time he will be coming into the season completely healthy, and it can only lead to more positive things for this team. The combination of star wide receiver T.Y. Hilton and rookie wide receiver Paris Campbell will make things even easier for Luck. Running back Marlon Mack and Naheem Hines will do wonders in the offense. Let's not even forget about the most important part of the offense, the offensive line. This, in many people's opinion, in my opinion, is the best offensive line in the NFL. And that's just the offense, too. The defense is not as amazing as the offense, but there's still some solid players. There's a solid unit that can be able to hold their own, and include players like Danico Autry, Ben Bonaghu, Clayton Gathers, Malik Hooker, and of course, last year's Defensive Rookie of the Year, Darius Leonard. This is more than enough to hold up the Colts because of the powerful offense that the Colts have. The Colts QB knows how to throw the ball to his receivers instead of in front of him, as we saw when they played the Colts. And let's face it, the Texans' O-line stunk last year, and a couple of washed-up late-round prospects that were reached on isn't going to help. The Colts' offensive line, however, is top tier. Thank you.
Okay, Houston, you have a defense now. What would you like to say against the opening statements of Indianapolis? You have 30 seconds.
Well, really, I just love how he talks about their receiving core, and he just thinks it's so great. Well, Paris Campbell is an unproven rookie. We have no idea what he's going to do. And then a guy that, I'm not sure if you mentioned this guy, but a guy that they went out and got. 'Cause, they have all this cap room, and then they go out and don't really do much, which, I don't care. Chris Ballard, do whatever you want. But let's look at the guy, Devin Funchess. They signed him. He's probably going to be their number 2 or number 3 receiver. Yeah, well, no, look at this. So, he played in 14 games last year. 549 receiving yards. And then you got, where is he? Will Fuller. He played in 7 games last year, and he has 503 receiving yards because, he's just, he's hurt all the time, but he's played in 31 career games. But, I don't know. So he has played half as many games as your possible number 2 receiver, and he almost has as many yards as him and the same amount of touchdowns. And then you talk about the offensive line because, that's a strength of the Colts. I'll give you that. So you're going to talk about that a lot. But 20 whatever year old rookies, these colleges, a rookie is not washed up. You said the term washed up. When I think of washed up, I think of a player that's 35 years old and well past his prime and trying to make a roster in training camp. No rookie is washed up. That just does not make sense. Like I said, they drafted 2 top 60 prospects and signed a veteran in free agency. They addressed the need. Is it an elite offensive line? No, but the word terrible cannot be associated with it. And then you talk about the running back. Well, Lamar Miller showed flashes of potential. He is very underrated. Behind that offensive line, which was terrible, almost 1,000 yards, rushing, 973 to be precise, averaging over 4.5 yards per carry.
I believe that was over 30 seconds.
It definitely was.
Okay. He can get longer.
No, he can't. That's the rules. I deduct
Well,
points for
stop
being
me.
longer. I'm not stopping you. You know your limits. I let you go. All right, Indianapolis, your last response.
I'm not saying Devin Funchess is the number 2 wide receiver. I'm going to say Paris Campbell is, and I'm going to say that because of what I've seen from what he was able to do in college. I feel like I'm confident enough to say that. And I do understand saying washed up was probably the wrong adjective to use. But you said it yourself. I have a video of you saying it when the Texans drafted Titus Howard. You had him as a 3rd-round prospect going to the Bears. That's not something you want to see in the 1st round. And then who was the other guy they got? I'm blanking right now.
Max Sharping. 50th overall prospect on Pro Football Focus's draft board. Go ahead.
All right, you're cutting in my time, please.
You can get more time.
But I just don't think that's going to be enough to really improve it that much. And it's going to be better, but it's not going to be good. That's all I have to say.
Okay. So questions for this round. We already talked a lot about receivers and offensive line. That's the main points that are being brought up here. But I'd just like to ask Tyler to talk a little bit more about his running backs, as we haven't talked about that nearly as much.
All right. Do I have a time limit to talk about them?
You have no longer than a minute.
All right, I'm gonna start with Naeem Hines, the second string running back, a solid running back. They had him in the beginning of the season before they really discovered what Marlon Mack could do. Solid out of the backfield, solid. He can catch passes on the run. He's got plenty of things he can do. He's kind of like a Tariq Cohen, but not as finessey, I guess. That's not a really good adjective for it. So solid player, Naeem Hines. Then you talk about Marlon Mack. I think he's every good as Lamar Miller is right now. A really solid player. He can run up the tackle. He can go outside. He's also a great pass catching back. He has it all. I think he's gonna be able to do a lot of things in his second year as like a standout running back. I wouldn't be surprised to see great things out of the Colts running back or the Colts backfield and be one of the best backfields in the NFL.
Okay.
Do I respond to that, or you got a separate question?
I have a separate question for you, Ryan. I just haven't come up with it yet. We just take a look at what you have said during this round.
I know it
So-
seems like we're mad at each other,
Yeah.
but we're just having
Yeah,
a
we're
time.
good. Yeah, I like this.
Yep.
Who knows? Maybe the Titans will win the AFC South, and we'll both laugh at each other. Who knows?
Mm-hmm.
So you brought up Devin Funchess.
Yeah.
And where you were trying to say that it was not a great pickup, is that correct?
Well, I was trying to say that I was basically comparing him to who'll probably be the number 2 or 3 receiver to a guy that'll probably be the Texans' number 2 or 3 receiver, and just show the gap because the Colts had all this cap room and they did nothing.
Okay. That's good enough for my question. Thank you.
All right. Then what are we doing next?
Now, next what we're going to do is we're going to go into 3 to 5 minutes of open discussion.
Okay.
We're going to let Tyler start talking about whatever he wants to talk about. We're going to go into open discussion, and you guys will just discuss for 3 to 5 minutes. I'll write down notes on whatever is said, and then after that, we will get to the end of this session. You may go now.
All right, I'm just curious because I don't follow Texans too much, but I know there's Kiki Cutie besides the wide receivers that we talked about. Is there anyone else that I really need to be aware of?
Well, there is Vincent Smith. He was an undrafted rookie. He kind of came onto the stage late in the year. You probably haven't heard of him. He had a big touchdown catch in that heartbreaking for me Week 16 loss against Philadelphia. So he kind of jumped onto the stage late once Demaryius Thomas got injured.
Okay, so I never really heard of him, so I just wanted to see if there's.
Well, he'd be
anyone
our
else.
4th receiver likely.
Yes, I understand that. And I talked about the receivers for the Colts already. There's a household name with T.Y. Hilton.
Okay.
I would say his household name, and then I talked about Paris Campbell as well. That it's a great job getting him in the draft. I didn't even talk about their other draft picks, which I can actually go into right now. Rocky Sin from Temple, that was a great pick. He was a first-round prospect. I talked about Ben Bonnigue, the linebacker from TCU. I talked about Paris Campbell. They had a solid draft. I mean, they're doing a great thing with the draft. You said they didn't really use their cap space. I don't think they need it right now. They're realizing, hey, we have a good team here. We can save this up for when we are starting to be on the decline. You know what I mean? So when they start to fall, that's when they use their cap space and save themselves. So they feel comfortable where they are, and they should because they have a really solid team.
Okay, so you're basically saying the Colts should not have used their cap space, so you're saying they should not have gone after a guy like Le'Veon Bell?
I think it wasn't necessary for
Okay.
them to use their money right now. They can use it when they need it more.
Okay. So you talk about their draft class. You mentioned Rocky Sin, but I believe Lonnie Johnson might have been the Texans' best pick in the draft because they have an aging secondary, and I got to think Lonnie Johnson is at least on the same level as Rocky Sin. They were both second-round picks. I'm sure some mock drafts had Lonnie a little higher, some had Rocky a little higher. So really, it just kind of depends. I think they are on the same level, and you can't say there's this huge gap like one's a first-rounder, one's a second-rounder. So the Texans really drafted a quarterback too.
I think
What?
I
No.
definitely could say. I don't think I ever saw Lonnie Johnson on one mock draft. You saw Rocky Sin on a bunch of mock
Oh.
drafts. I'm sure there were a couple
yeah,
mock drafts where he was there,
I've
but you
seen
see Rocky Sin on a lot more mock drafts, meaning he's
And then
a better player than Lonnie Johnson is. Continue.
Yeah, and then Charles Omenihu, who I think was a steal. They took him in the 5th round, a great defensive end player, out of Texas. He's just a guy that was really a steal. How you talk about how the Texans, they didn't have as many draft picks as the Colts, I don't believe. But, really, Charles Omenihu is a great guy. I was very happy when they got him that late. And then, do you have anything else to say about the draft? Because I want something else I want to talk about.